All right, I'd like to go ahead and call the December 8th work session of the Jackson County Board of Education to order. Member Johnson is not available here tonight. He had some other business, but we do have a quorum, so we will proceed. And I know we did this last time, and what is it, to make something a habit, you have to do it 5 or 6 times? So this will only be our second time, but I would like to start off with the pledge, if that's all right. Mr. Sanders, would you do us the honor?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Sanders, appreciate that. I didn't notify you ahead of time, so you did real well.
Glad to miss it.
All right. Our first item on the agenda is going to be superintendent's comments. So, Dr. Brown, we'll go ahead and let you get going.
Thank you, Mr. Clarsey. Appreciate staff being here this evening. Great things going on in our school district as we wind down the semester. First off, I'd like to thank the board for their involvement and attendance at the GSBA conference last week in Atlanta. Appreciate your partnership and support. This Monday night at our regular session board meeting, we'll have East Jackson Middle School. We'll present highlights from their school year thus far. Over the past few days, I've had the opportunity to visit almost all of our schools. I continue to be impressed with our teachers, our support staff, and our leaders. I see students engaged in meaningful work. I see leaders working with parents and teachers as we build relationships and partnerships to support all of our students. I'd like these individuals to know that their work is valued and appreciated. I'd like to thank our parents for their trust. I know how difficult it can be at times, especially on today like today when it's a full moon, to drop your kid off at school. And I'm so thankful that we have caring, trusted adults at our schools to help educate our young people. I'd also like at this time to introduce Miss Miriam Ledford-Lyle. Miriam, if you don't mind standing, she is our newest principal. Will be joining us in January as the new principal at the new Legacy Knoll Middle School. So welcome, Miriam. We're glad to have you. We started end-of-course testing today at our high schools, and we're also in the process, Mr. Schultz is, of doing our end-of-pathway exams in our career tech and agricultural education programs. We've had several different competitions going on around the district. Our career tech and ag students are competing in various competitions with their CTSOs at this time. Yesterday, we hosted our first annual district-wide technology competition. Mr. Jeremy Peacock, or Dr. Jeremy Peacock was in charge of that. It was a competition with our elementary schools and middle school students here in this room in various different types of technologies. So really want to thank Dr. Peacock for his leadership in pulling that off. Our elementary and middle school students are also involved in Lego League teams. Each of our schools have at least one team and some have 2. And both of our high schools are right now in the process of competing in their robotics teams. And I think East High has the number 1 and number 2 teams in our area right now for robotics. And both of our esports teams have had successful seasons. This is our first year of offering that, and really appreciate the leadership Dr. Stratemeyer, Mr. Wester, and Dr. Blackburn have showed in leading that and helping give students that opportunity, and they really seem to be enjoying it. We're also in the middle of our athletic seasons for the winter. We have swimming, wrestling, basketball, and esports, literary, and dance all going on at this time. We also have a number of students who are competing in district honor band, district course, and many will compete at all-state band and all-state course in the spring. Later this evening, we'll hear from Mr. Jason Kent. Jason is our safety and security coordinator who joined us a few months ago. I'm extremely proud of the work that Jason's been doing to support our schools and leaders as we do and take care of our number 1 responsibility, which is to keep our students safe each and every day. So with that said, that concludes my comments.
All right, Dr. Brown, appreciate that. I wish we were all scurrying out of here to watch a high school football championship tonight or tomorrow night from one of our high schools, but maybe that's in the cards for us in the near future. I would like to add, I think Mr. Eastler jumped out of here. I brought him an article from the AJC this week that highlighted the grading, the heavy equipment class at another high school, and he informed me that our folks are going to do some external testing at C.W. Matthews' site on Monday. So hopefully he'll have a good report. We have 5 folks in that program. So AJC highlighted another high school in Georgia that received a similar grant that we received. So I brought him the article. So at any rate, that's just a little bit of additional information. So our next item is, I guess this is just a reminder of sorts, that we will vote on Monday night for our officers for 2023. And so then our next item is teaching and learning. So we have a CC RPI update. Look forward to hearing about that.
Yes, good evening. So every year, the Georgia Department of Education releases what's known as the CCRPI, that stands for College Career Readiness Performance Index. And this is something that's out there for the public, so we want you to have a good overview of the different components of that. It's just one indicator of school quality, but it's something that we dig into with our leaders. It actually was released on November 16th, just a couple of days after our last board meeting. And so we've shared this with our principals and talked through what this data kind of means for us. It's based on last year's milestones data and some other factors. So I just want to kind of go over that with you and take any questions and let you know where we stand so that you'll have a good understanding of that and how we use that. We're always looking for how we can dig into our data to continue to improve and to make sure that we're providing the very best experience for our students. As we know, with the pandemic, and honestly, calculations for the CCRPI change sometimes from year to year, but the pandemic specifically hit some areas. So not all areas are reported on this year. So I'll go through with you some changes to that. In a typical year, the components are content mastery, progress, closing gaps, readiness, and graduation rate for high school. But and then there's usually a summative rating as well. This year, due to the pandemic and some of those data points not being available, there are no summative ratings. So we don't have that final score where we might compare school to school. It's more the components that I'll share with you. So this year, and if you'll kind of scroll through there, whoever's doing our PowerPoint, let's go to that where it says the modified reporting. A little bit further. There we go. And I think you have a copy of this if you want to kind of follow along. But this just gives you an overview of what's reported on this year. No summative ratings. Content mastery, there are no changes to that, and that's the achievement component, and I'm going to go through each of these with you and show you kind of where we stand on these. So no changes to content mastery. Progress is an area where we only have one component of that. Typically, we have our math and our ELA progress, which is our growth, but this year, due to COVID and pandemic years, there's only the proficiency towards English language proficiency, how students are moving towards that English language proficiency in the EL bands. There's the closing the gaps section that is not reported this year. And under readiness, not all indicators are reported, and we'll talk through that as we go through each section, and then no changes to graduation rate. So if we'll scroll on down and let's look at the data that kind of feeds this. Our end of grade and end of course assessments are the data that are used to calculate the content mastery and also the growth areas. And then so for 3rd through 8th grade, we're talking about those end of grade course assessments or the end of grade assessments. 5th grade is the only grade that takes the science assessment in elementary. And then for 8th grade, they either take the 8th grade science end of grade or the physical science. And then you see the listing there of our end of course assessments: American Lit and Composition, Algebra, Coordinate Algebra, Biology, and U.S. History. And then also calculating in the content mastery section are the GAA assessments. And then under our progress area, we have the access for ELLs. We'll scroll down one more slide for me. Let's take a look at our CCRPI data by school, and it's kind of small on there, and we'll go through each section of this, but this just allows you to kind of look over and see where each of our schools stand for content mastery. And I'll also give you, once we kind of go through each of these, where we stand in terms of the state data. We are above the state in all areas and above many of our surrounding counties. We're not where we want to be, and we continue to work towards increasing our achievement scores as well as our growth. But when we look at it, relatively speaking, there are some areas that we can celebrate, and then definitely areas where we can dig in. So you'll see that content mastery is reported there by ELA, math, science, and then social studies picking up in middle school, and then those different areas for high school. And if scroll down one more slide for me, let's take a look just at content mastery by itself here. So you can see the overall school scores there listed to the right. So for content mastery, in milestones, students can score a level 1, 2, 3, or 4. If they score a level 1, we don't receive any points at all towards content mastery. If they score a level 2, we receive 0.5, level 3 is 1 point, and level 4. Level 3 and 4 are always where we're striving for. That's our proficient and beyond. So we still get a little bit of credit there for the level 2, but always in our school improvement planning and our, pushing students toward that level of proficiency, we're always looking for those level 3s and 4s. So if you want to know a little bit about where we stand in relation to the state, that bottom number, you'll see our elementary overall content mastery score was a 67.5. The state score was a 63. Middle school, 65.2 was our district score. The state score was 60. And for high school, we were 71.2. And the state score was a 64.7. So we are above the state in all of those areas. But when we see those, we know that we want to continue to push for that high performance. And that's really the work that we're doing and digging into our data and really putting structures in place for a continuous improvement cycle to make sure that we can continue to go after that performance. Yep. Question?
What would you think is what we would be shooting for if you just looked at these district numbers compared to a state number? And maybe I should wait to the end, but this is a pretty thick little.
We always want to be shooting for really a high percentage of our students hitting that level 3 and 4 mark. So I would love to see us pressing, you always kind of look at, well, what's a 3% or a 5% goal, but I would love to see us pushing towards the 80s and eventually 90s. I mean, that's where our top performing districts are. So we will continue to work towards that. Okay, so it calculates an achievement rate. So the achievement rate, if you look at the 4 levels that a student could score on the end of course or end of grade assessment, they're either going to be in that beginning learner, developing learner, proficient, or distinguished. So we get a score based on where those students score. They're going to get a 0.5, a 1, or 1.5, and that's used to calculate an achievement score. And Martha may be able to articulate even, she's so good at this, so I'm going to let Martha feel free to.
So you're talking about 3 through 5, so the elementary school scores are going to be just your 3 through 5, and again with language arts and math. So for each one of those students that scores a particular level, you get, as that indicates, you indicate 1 or 1.5. We want those to be in the 3s and 4s because, and as when we get to the English language, you'll see some of our elementary schools scored above 100 because they get 1.5 points for that distinguished level. So it really just is an accumulated score of all the students that we're testing.
Okay, so it's not 0 from 100.
Right. Yeah.
So if, I'm a little slow. So if everybody in the school made a 0, what would that content mastery score be? It would be a 0.
zero.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And there are some really great resources on, if you go to the Godot website, Georgia Department of Education, there's a short little video. So there are some things that will kind of help you put these pieces in context. And also you can look at our data by elementary, middle, and high, and it'll kind of drill down into those. So I think we have that link. We can show you where that is. And sometimes the calculations, there's about a 30-page guide to explain the calculations. There are lots of formulas and layers to that. So I understand. It's one of those things that kind of takes a little digging into to really understand all the calculations.
I would hope we wouldn't need to read a 30-page document. But the one thing I will say, when I came onto the board, we were just starting this, if I remember right. And I remember going online and reading about it, and then, bam, COVID was here just when you thought you were kind of understanding it. So we haven't really discussed it in detail. So this is kind of getting back into it, so to speak. So I'm having to shake the cobwebs, I guess, and understand.
Year is basically the reset or the baseline year, where everything will start from going forward. So when we're talking about the fact that there's no progress score, it's because there's nothing to compare it to from the previous year, so there's no way they could calculate that. So it's a little misleading in some ways because it's just partial components of the overall.
So let's scroll down to that next one on the progress score. Question? Mm-hmm.
Last time that we did have these tests, how do we compare with the scores that we had the last time? Is it much different?
It's honestly, it's a little bit category by category, how we've had a little bit of a dip, but we've held steady if you look comparatively, and especially kind of looking at our neighboring districts. I would say we've dipped a little, but you don't have the summative score, so it's a little hard to compare because there are so many different components. That's a good question. And what I would say is we are definitely building back. We know we have areas that we really need to dig in and go after, but we're seeing areas where we're holding steady. We can look specifically at some areas where we've put some things in place, and we see some strength in our math and some strength in pockets in different areas, and we can kind of relate that to some of the work that we've done, and then we know where we have continued work to do to shore that up. So looking at the next one, progress, this is where we refer to sometimes SGP, student growth percentiles, and in a typical year, you would have those student growth percentiles, but as Ms. Wilson just mentioned, this is the baseline year, so this will be a baseline for next year. We'll have those, if you remember, if we've ever shown you kind of those little growth bubbles that you can even see for teacher by teacher and see their student growth percentiles. That's a great piece to bring back because we're always pressing not only for that high achievement, the content mastery side, but also high growth. So that's something that will be coming back. So for this year, the only measure that we have under progress is progress towards English language proficiency, but I do want to highlight there our elementary score and this is how we're moving students across those bands when they take the access test towards English language proficiency, and we had 100 plus for elementary, so that's just a great testament to the work that our teachers are doing there with and our EL students and moving them towards language proficiency. And looking at middle and high school, we were significantly lower, but also recognizing that sometimes those are the students, sometimes either those students have just recently come to us or there are other factors at play there, but also something that we're continuing to look into. And Ms. Spindle has been doing great work and really looking at how we can maximize serving those kids. Then the next slide, we have closing the gaps, and this is not reported this year. This is where we look at subgroups, and in a typical year, the state would put out targets, so this will be a baseline for those targets, and this is where we talk about how are all students making growth and progress towards those achievement goals. So they put a target out there, and you either get a red, yellow, or green flag based on movement towards that target, whether you're hitting the target. And so that's a piece that'll be added back in for next year. So subgroups that we typically look at there are economically disadvantaged, EL, and students with disabilities. And then the next slide, we have readiness. So there are several indicators for readiness, and not all of these are at play this year because we're still not counting attendance. That's a piece that as we look towards next year, we'll be looking at adding that back in. But for this year, we have literacy is one component of readiness. So this is really thinking about how we're preparing our students for the future and preparing them for that next level. So literacy takes it's the students demonstrating kind of that on grade level reading comprehension. So it takes the midpoint of the Lexile. They give you a Lexile stretch band for each grade level, and it's those students who are hitting that Lexile target. So it's really that on grade level reading performance. And then it looks at some other factors as well. For elementary, there's the Beyond the Core, and that's are our students engaged in a fine arts, a world language, or a computer science course. And typically we do well on that because all of our students have that art experience, and some of them might have a world language or a computer science, but definitely get that art experience. So if you look at how our students are doing there in terms of readiness, we see that we have a 71.9 for elementary, a 74.1 for middle, and a 76 for high school. Comparatively, we are above the state in most of those areas. And honestly, we're digging into literacy because that's an area where we know we have work to do. So we do have students, more students than we would like, below not hitting that grade level performance in literacy. So that is some of the big work that we're doing. As you get to middle and in high school, there are a couple other components under readiness, and those are the accelerated enrollment. So our students in our AP, IB, dual enrollment programs, our pathway completion, and then also high school layers on one more component, and that is graduation rate. Martha, what did I miss? Anything that I didn't hit there? Questions from you all as we consider those components that we look at and digging into our students' readiness and how we're doing? So most of these components, we've already shared the data with you at another point. We've shared our milestones data at the end of last year. We've shared our graduation rate. We've shared all of these pieces. This just kind of puts it together in a calculation that then is shared with our community. So we want you to see how they take those different data points that we've shared with you at other times, and they put that together in a way that kind of rolls out publicly. So if you don't have any other questions, well, let's do one more thing. Tech folks, can you click on that link on the very last slide so they can see where they can go to this if they'd like to look at either the information on the state website? So there's, if you'll go one more slide down, there's a link on there. Yep, right there.
Is that where we get the 30-page document?
Well, you could if you'd like to.
Okay.
But there's also a nice short little video, and then you
Okay.
can also, search for Jackson County, you can look at surrounding areas, you can click on elementary, middle, and high, and you can drill down to some of the data so that you can see for yourself exactly what those pieces are.
Okay.
Does the link work? You can click on it? Oh, it won't, because maybe it's a PDF. I'll make sure that you all have that. I can email that to you.
Oh, yeah. So you'll send us
I'll
either the
send you
link or the...
live link. Yes,
Okay.
I will do
That'd
that.
be even
I'll do it
better.
right now.
Point click is easier.
Yep.
Ms.
Any
Wilson.
other questions for me?
Yeah, Ms. Wilson shared a interesting piece of data with me as we were walking in today. The number of different primary languages now spoken in our schools. What was that number? So,
When we reported that FTE, the information we did just in October, we had 25 primary languages, that's 31 now. So those numbers keep, right above, we hit the 10,000 student mark.
Do we have staff that can speak the 31 languages?
No, so we utilize, primarily a language line, and we didn't, obviously we have Spanish speaking, and that's the primary language, of course. But, so we have a language line we can call with any, and they have translators, that can provide support to, families. And we also provide a lot of written communication in all different kinds of languages.
Those same kids take the same test? Okay.
It used to be kind of where you had newcomers that you didn't, you had almost a year to get them, and now we don't have that anymore. So that's why if you look at those bands, like for the EL, the majority of the students that have gone through our entire ESOL program from elementary to the
North Jackson is the one that has most.
How many languages you speak, Mr. Clearston?
Speech.
It's my last meeting, work session, so
Behave.
I need to keep a little dignity, Mr. Hollett, so just one.
All right, well, thank you, and I will send you that link.
Thank you very much. All right, we're moving right along. Moving to Human Resources, Ms. Todd,
Yes, sir.
guess you drew the straw tonight.
I did.
All
Good
right.
evening. Good evening. I am happy to provide a brief update from the Human Resources Department. The first is our enrollment report is available for November, and as you can see, our growth trend continues. At the end of November, we have added 665 students since the end of last school year. And while our total enrollment on this report is 9,998, as Ms. Wilson just referenced, as of today, we are at 10,001. So we have definitely hit that milestone of 10,000 students. Our school level staff have shared their employment intentions for next school year. And based on this information, we anticipate 23 resignations or retirements at the end of the school year. 39 employees are interested in transferring to a different location, and 29 of those are actually a specific interest in Legacy Knoll. So that was very encouraging. In January, we will be finalizing our projected enrollments and for all of our schools, and that will determine our personnel allocations. And once we have that finalized, we will start getting with principals and start our hiring season. But to prepare for that now, we're going to start posting some anticipated vacancies so we can gather a pool of quality candidates and be ready when we get that final data in. And in addition, we're scheduled to attend several college and career fairs in the upcoming months to ensure we're doing everything we can to get the best of the best here in JCSS. So, any questions about personnel?
So the 23, that's system-wide?
System-wide, yes, sir. And that's typical. That's a typical number of, especially with retirements and resignations. So that's not alarming, I guess I would say. And then excited about the interest in Legacy Knoll.
All right,
All right.
everybody good?
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
all right. Up. Go right ahead, Mr. Hollett.
So, how many, and this is maybe a hard to answer question, but so how many will we need to add with Legacy Knoll?
So-
Opposed to just moving some over, do you have?
Yes, sir. We're waiting because we will go through that the process where parents will be able to go through the House bill process, and so some parents might choose to stay at West Middle if they have an 8th grader, and I think Mr. Hooper will speak to that process in a little bit. But once we kind of have a good idea of how many students will be at Legacy Knoll, then that will allow us to say, okay, this many students equals this many personnel. And then we'll look at West Middle. That leaves this many students at West Middle, which means that leaves them with this personnel allotment, and then we'll shift accordingly. Yeah. All right. Thank y'all.
All right, thank you. Okay, public relations.
All right. Mr. Clayton, since this is your last work session, I guess this is the last time I thank you for letting me come back. So, as I do each and every month. Thank you.
Had I not had my mind elsewhere, I might have asked you to leave, but
I beat you to it tonight. So I got a few items for you tonight. In all seriousness, congratulations to you for your time here. But the first item tonight is the 2023-24 school calendar. As Dr. Brown has noted on a podcast that we did, I counted for many days to make sure I had 180 days in the school calendar and 10 professional learning days. I didn't always have it right, but I do now. So we consulted with our various committees to find the best calendar suitable for our families and for our students. We met with the teacher advisory committee. We met with the parent advisory committee. Those are pretty insightful to hear different philosophies on the calendar and when breaks should happen for families and students, which I believe we made the best calendar for all involved. So we'll have 180 days for school, 10 professional learning days. We're in 2023 proposing for a start in August, which will be a Thursday start. I know we generally like a Friday start, but pushing a little bit later into August kind of limits what we can do. The Thursday start, feedback from the teacher advisory committee was that it's better for the younger students, less time that first week, kind of gets the ball rolling, and then we get the weekend to rest and then come back on Monday and hit the ground running. 5 professional learning days to start the year. We've normally done 4. That was a request by our teachers with the meetings and the planning, the open houses. They requested a 5th day up front, and that was kind of a very wide, request by our teachers and faculty. One thing we're proposing is a shortened fall break. Rather than a week-long fall break to go to 3 days. This will decrease the amount of time that our students are out of the curriculum, a week long in October, and then they get the week long in November. This will keep them coming back to the classroom quicker. So that'd be a fall break for staff and students. That Thursday through a Monday, that is the weekend that our athletic teams have already planned to take off because of the 2-year scheduling with the GHSA. So that would be that weekend as well. There's a student holiday in practically every month, which we believe is important. Students get a day off to kind of charge their batteries a little bit. So there's a day off in September, October, November, December, January, February, March, and April. So I think that's very important. And then the proposed last day is Tuesday, May 21st. So getting out before the Memorial Day. We'll show you the calendar real quick. We're going to flip over. I put it over there bigger so you can kind of get a glimpse of it if they can switch over real quick. And we are requesting to vote Monday night of your approval. So as you can see the calendar there, just like we said, a Thursday start. It'll be a student holiday on the Friday before Labor Day. The 12th, 13th, and 16th in October, there being the holiday for staff and students, a whole week off in Thanksgiving. And then students will come back on the 3rd of January, staff on the 2nd of January, and then you see a week-long spring break and the customary week there for spring break. So, and then 2 professional learning days to end the year as well. So, any questions on that?
So on the calendar, was this just kind of the consensus, or was there?
So we had originally 4 options that we showed to the principals. Got some feedback on that. We were able to narrow it down to 2 that we showed to our committees. And of the 2, we actually blended the final 2 options together to come up with this, seeking the feedback. I think both final options had like a Tuesday and Wednesday start. We were able to push it to a Thursday to kind of get that shorter. So I think ultimately we've basically had 6 options of calendars kind of morph into this one right here.
So you feel like this? I didn't see the other ones, but I guess you feel like this is the best of the 4, so to speak, or?
I do, yes, sir. Okay. I think the shorter fall break, the key with the fall break as well, is the week-long fall break we've had here in Jackson County. High school students were not awarded the opportunity to take the PSATs the first time. They were only given the makeup day. So if a student was absent or something happened that day, the PSAT scores didn't count. PSATs are usually the 2nd Wednesday in October, so you see we're in school that day, and then the fall break. So we're accommodating those students to giving them the opportunity for the PSATs, which of course for juniors, the National Honor Society is a big deal. So we want to give them those opportunities with that fall break.
I personally like the calendar. I don't want to give you the impression I don't, but I've been questioned about it, so I wanted to make sure
So
I asked.
fall break, this one, there are no athletics going on?
So for high school football, at least for football, because the 2-year GHSA plan, scheduling, the high school teams were already off this year for it. So I consulted with both high school athletic directors. Football will not play on the 13th. So that is something that we took into account.
Because in the past, there still was a break, there was still practice.
Right.
Fall break.
Yeah. I can't speak for softball and volleyball. I don't think those schedules are out yet for next year, but at least with football, we know they're on that 2-year cycle. So
Well, we get in a pattern, then it'll make it easier just going
Yes, sir.
forward, so.
absolutely. So, any other questions of the calendar? All right.
All right.
I want to also inform you as we can go to the next item that we're talking about Legacy Knoll and West Jackson and the transfer process. Then the next week we will be sending out notification to the families that are in each school zone, West Jackson or Legacy Knoll. Of course, they can go to the website and kind of look at the maps and where their house lies. So this to be the official confirmation to them of what school zone they are zoned in for 2023-24. That'll be sent out through USPS and through Infinite Campus as well. And it'll really highlight the process we went through to get to these attendance zones for the middle school. It'll also highlight the transfer process for anybody wishing to attend the other school, whether they go to Legacy Knoll and want to go to West Middle, or people who are at West Middle and want to be part of the Legacy at Legacy Knoll. So the transfer process will be a House Bill 251 transfer. However, to get that allotment for our faculty and staff, we're going to expedite that process when it comes to West, Middle, and Legacy Knoll. So they'll have between January 1st and January 31st to submit those requests. We've created an online form so they can do the paper version as well, but they can also submit the entire form has been recreated online. And so they can submit it, which helps us with the timestamp, and it goes to the appropriate people. And those requests were reviewed by a district and the school that is being requested that administration. So again, families can still fill out the form paper and then bring it to the district office, and those will all be reviewed immediately. So, and get those families notified. Any requests made after January 31st will follow under the normal timeline of House Bill 251, and those families will be notified in July. So. Questions on that? All right. And want to remind you that the high school graduations have been set. Class of 2023, they're already halfway through their senior year, almost, so I know they're getting excited. Jackson County High School is going to graduate Friday, May 19th at 7:30 p.m. inside their football stadium. East Jackson will hold its ceremony May 20th, that's Saturday at 10 a.m. inside their football stadium. I've already looked at the weather and talked to the people, and we're going to be good on weather those days. So we don't have to worry about rain or hail or anything like that. We're going to be good to go. So. And then the last thing I wanted to I don't have a graphic for it, but to give you an idea of how far we're reaching right now in Jackson County with our social media and everything, and our website, we had 14,000 people come to the Jackson County website in the month of November alone. So our community wants to be informed. So 14,000. In the last 90 days, we've reached 109,614 people just through our district Facebook page. Compare that to last year at this time, it was 31,000 in that 90-day stretch. We're at 109,000. In the last 90 days, we've reached 38,400 people on Instagram through our district pages. So our community is wanting to be informed by going to our website, interacting with our pages, and I think that really shows that Jackson County's reach is getting out there. So I wanted to share those numbers. Yes, sir.
I have a question about graduation days. Is Jackson County always on Friday and East Jackson always on Saturday?
I'm glad someone else knew that answer because I did not know. So, any other questions tonight?
So is this going to be are we going to shoot for this Friday, Saturday business going forward, or is this just how the calendar fell this year?
No, we're going to attempt to shoot for the Friday, Saturday, so that
Okay.
families can, the goal is so that people's families who are traveling from out of town can be there. So we think it's really important to try to do it on a weekend.
So next year, I can count on Saturday morning? This
Yes,
year,
sir.
it's, okay,
Since you hired me.
okay. I'll go ahead. The weather's going to be great. He's
I
already said.
checked. Made the calls already.
That's
so,
right.
That's right. So, thank you, board.
Thank you. All right.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure to bring our financial reports for November. Gonna wait on you to pull one up so I know where we're starting. Okay, SPLOST. So in October, we received that money in November. We received $1,128,000 which is a $36,000 decrease from our prior month. And it's an increase from last November of $141,000. Our average over the last 12 months has become $1,153,000, which is a small dip, 24,000 less than our last month's average. But I think the most important thing when I look at this report is our ending balance. We're at $20,662,135.28. And what we're excited about with that number is that we have enough in this account right now to pay the remaining balance of what we owe for Legacy Knoll. So that feels really, really good. Because that means our future collections between now and August of 2024, in addition to the $9 million of advance funding we expect to get, will all go towards the new elementary school. Can go to the next report unless anybody has a question.
No, I mean, what do you ask about that?
Yeah, I know. Feels good. Okay, so for our financial report for November, I always like to start in the middle, that percent of the year completed. We're at 42% of the year. And when we look at our expenditures, we have 42% of our planned expenditures spent. And there's a lot of big expenses as you get a school year started. So to be about halfway through and in line with the percent of the year completed feels good. It makes me think we're doing a good job and being responsible and careful with what we're spending. Revenues, however, are at 26% of what we had budgeted, and that is usually behind at this point in the year. And you'll see that a little more when we look at the fund balance and talk about what's going on there. So our fund balance ended in November with $8,030,890.38. And the little notes we have at the bottom for you that in November of 21, we had a fund balance increase of $5 million. This year, we only had a fund balance increase of $1 million. So that's about a $4 million difference. So our ending fund balance this year is $9 million less than last year. And the reason for that is two big things. Our CARES 3 grant, we're still working on getting that approved. And the way grants work, you spend the money first and then they reimburse you. So we have $5 million that we've spent that can't be reimbursed yet. Another piece of that is the timing of when tax revenue comes in. We received a $4 million payment right at the beginning of December. That last year we got that November 18th. So there seems to be a little lag in receiving our tax revenue. We do overall expect to have more this year. Just at this point in time, it hasn't gotten to us yet. Any questions on any of those?
Well, they're not, so they're due the middle of December, so.
Right.
Then I guess the tax commissioner just transfers it over to you.
They have a variety of ways of getting it to us,
Okay.
yes. Sometimes we pick it up, sometimes they mail it, sometimes they transfer it.
I mean, if you look at the history, I mean, 8 million doesn't match up to what it was last year, but over the course of history, it's really kind of a home run, so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but aren't we spending more out of our general budget that we had not been previously?
Yes,
So that has. a big
absolutely.
impact on that.
Yes, SPLOST used to pick up some things that we're doing with general fund now, so yes, that's a big part of it too. The last thing I want to let you know about, we got the fiscal year 21 audit draft back. And there were no findings, no misstatements, and no reportable items. So that's a really big celebration for us. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll just keep this train rolling right on down the track.
Mr. Clearsey and board, it is great to be have the opportunity to speak tonight. It is, I would say, it's been good to know Mr. Clearsey for 6 months, and I appreciate your welcoming me to Jackson County. I do appreciate that. You've been good to me.
We'll let you come back next
Wish you
month.
well. You want to let me come back? That's good. Just want to say a quick words before I turn it over to Mr. Kent. But just the focus of operations, still supporting the educational programs of the Jackson County Schools to help serve the needs of the community. We're going to continue to work on that and work together for that goal. So I'm going to turn it over real quick to our safety and security supervisor. Mr. Kent's been with us 2 or 3 months. I can say, along with many of our administrators, it's been a very positive transition. I think we've got some very exciting things going on, and I think I'll let him kind of share those items.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate y'all having me here today and giving me time to speak. And I promise you my report's going to be just as positive as the financial report. So it's been a very busy 12 weeks for me. And at first, I just want to publicly acknowledge the administration, from everybody in this room to the staff at each school. They've been very, warm and welcoming for my position here. That being said, they've also gone above and beyond what's necessary to get me in the door to address issues that they've had for some of them several years. But we're making great progress on that, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge them for stepping forward and taking this safety and security so important and so seriously in the district. So on my briefing topics here, the first thing I'd like to brief you on is the Georgia Emergency Management Homeland Security Intelligence Report. Without getting into a lot of detail on that, we'll touch on some brief details of that, then get you up to speed on the latest swatting incidents, which is a nationwide issue that we're having, and then specifically at the end, we'll talk about some district safety and security improvements. Notable information here, Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Department has hired a former CIA senior officer to head up their intelligence section there down at GEMA in Atlanta. And what that specifically means for us as a school district is that we get more information from the state and federal partners. So it's more communication, more collaboration with our federal and state partners to keep us up to speed on current threats and the state of the school systems across the state. So just want to make that note that she was appointed in November, and I look forward to great things from that unit, being able to communicate with us, specifically me, on current threats and received threats that they received down at the state capitol at GEMA and Homeland Security. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And a portion of this report is prepared by GEMA and Homeland Security section, and the reporting period is August 1st, 2022 to October 31st, 2022.
Can I ask just real quick?
Yes, sir.
So before we hired this person, what would they do? They'd just disseminate information out to local law enforcement, and you'd have to get it that way?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they feel the need to get the information directly to the school districts, and with this new intelligence unit, that's the purpose of that. They have a statewide reporting notification system to where anonymous reports can come to them, and they'll disseminate back out to the school board, hey, to the safety and security person for that school district, that hey, we received a threat, and we'll work in conjunction with them to investigate that threat and also to take action to prevent that threat should we feel the need to do that.
Okay.
So there were several dozen school threats reported to the intelligence unit over this reporting period. And if you could scroll to the next slide, please. The most was in Metro Atlanta. Obviously, that's to be expected. They have the largest population and have the highest crime rate down that way. That was 31% of the reported threats were in that district. The least was Region 4, which is the Columbus region area. They didn't receive any threats during this reporting period. And in our region, we were 18%. That's all of Northeast Georgia is Area 1. And specifically here in Jackson County, that was one threat in the reporting period, not for our school district, but for another school district. The method of that threat or the month of the threats was obviously the start of the school year. August and September were the highest at 40%, and then October dipped down at 18.2%. And it is noted that November and December will be unexpectedly higher due to the incidents that occurred down in Savannah over the last couple weeks, and I'll get to that in the next topic here. So percentages, the type of threat, of over 40% of them were handgun threats. 25% were long gun threats, and then you see the others there broken down 18 and 14% respectively. And then obviously social media, like Mr. Hooper mentioned, social media is where it's at right now as far as communication, and that's still leading for the method of delivery for those threats through social media. 47% of those threats that were reported during this reporting period were through the use of social media. Snapchat and Instagram are still the number 1 and number 2 apps that the students are using to communicate those threats. So we'll transition into our second topic here, school swatting threat update. Over the last several weeks and months, actually, there's been a nationwide, incident where someone calls 911 and reports a threat to a specific school. Specifically in Savannah, it was a shooting at the Savannah High School. The caller stated that there were 6 people shot at the school. That turned out not to be the case. It was a hoax call, and all these events are hoax calls. They seem to show that there's an incident there, something that's going to elicit a large law enforcement response, such as a bomb threat or a shooting or a mass casualty event or something like that. And what that does is that, basically sends the world to them. All your first responder agencies, surrounding agencies, whoever, just like they did in Savannah, there were 18 different agencies, law enforcement agencies on scene down there during that event, and that happened last week. And there was several other surrounding counties that received the same threat. The next day, there were some in North Carolina. There was 8 different school systems up there in North Carolina that received a threat. There was 4 out in Washington State on the West Coast, and it got as close as the city of Gainesville for us. They received threats on that same day as well. So it's a nationwide trend. The calls are similar in nature to the hoax received by Georgia colleges and universities earlier this year. Similar hoax calls were received at schools in other states, most recently in Alabama, and the calls all have similar characteristics. And this is being investigated as a domestic terrorism incident. So what are we doing to try to counter this? We're in close communication with our law enforcement 911 center, specifically to the 911 director and Sheriff Mangum with the Sheriff's Department. So we have a clear understanding of what law enforcement's response is going to be, and that law enforcement response will be robust. They're going to respond whether it's real or not, whether we determine it's a hoax or whatever. They still have the same response, whether to that incident. So we need to expect that, and we do. And we get regular intelligence updates with the school administrators, so we brief them of the information I'm getting from GEMA and GSAC, and the intelligence portion of the law enforcement I'm passing along to the district staff as well as the principals and administrators at that school. So we're all on the same page. We know what to expect with the local threats and know how to respond to that. And then real-time situation awareness at all of our schools with our our simulated SOC at my office. So we have real-time cameras, views of the schools, so in communication, direct communication with the 911 center, so we can confirm or deny as an event's taking place on whether it's a real event or a hoax event. So specifically at the district level, security improvements that we've done over the last 12 weeks has been a refocused emphasis on our existing security programs. With COVID and everything that's happened over the last 2 years, sometimes some of these areas have been, I wouldn't say neglected, but not enough attention has been given to them to keep them on par with where they need to be. So we've worked on safety drills. All the schools are doing full lockdown drills, fire drills, safety team drills. they're doing alert notifications through Centegix, using our Centegix system to do those drills, access control, and then security surveillance systems. So each of the schools do one of the following safety drills each month, either a lockdown drill, severe weather drill, or fire drill. And also, I left off this slide, but medical drills as well. And then with the Centegix alert system, we've incorporated that alert system into our drills, to where if we have a lockdown drill or a fire drill or a weather drill, even severe weather drill, we're using that Centegix system to make notification or to activate the drill and make notification to the schools and both the district personnel as well. We're averaging about 16 alerts per month with our Centegix system, and those can be anything from medical to behavior problems with children to physical altercations or a drill, or just sometimes it's an accidental press. So what we've done with Centegix is we also created an updated notification protocol with the district staff, meaning to where I'm the central point of communication with that school to determine what their situation is at the time, instead of, different people throughout the district calling when they get the alert. So we've pared that down so there's clear communication with all of our administrators, between myself, the administrator, and the 911 center and our first responders. And then we just completed actually yesterday a district-wide preventative maintenance on our Centegix system, where we had technicians out, checking all the strobes and all the transmitters and making sure all that was up to speed and batteries changed on what needed to be changed, and make sure everything was operational. And then, like I said before, activation of drills via Centegix program. So that's been huge. So we have district-wide. As soon as that button's pushed, we know about it. Access control. We have completed the access control for the central office building. So it is now required to have a JCSS ID badge to get into that facility, just as it is required at any of our schools. So that's a huge step. The visitors must check in at the front door. District communications. This was, when I came, this was something I identified probably the first week here, was that we needed to reestablish lines of communication amongst us at the district level, and kind of clean that process up to where there's one person communicating the information to the key leaders of the district. That way there's not any confusion, there's not any duplication. Someone says something this way, someone says something that way. What I've established is a text communication alerts with the district level staff, to anytime there's a Centegix alert, I'll send a text out, hey, working a staff alert, East Jackson High School, and then I'll communicate with the school, find out what that staff alert is, see if they need any assistance from the district level, and then communicate back to the district staff, letting them know what the update is. That way I can focus on it, they can focus on what they need to do, and they just get the updates from me on whether or not this is a real event or something we need to dedicate additional resources to. Security camera assessment. We conducted security assessments at all schools. Obviously, the high schools have the most number of cameras, and they had the most issues. We're in the process of addressing those issues now, and making really good progress on that. Spent a lot of hours personally I know where every camera is in every high school in the district right now, and working on the elementary and middle schools right now. So identified cameras that need to be replaced, repositioned views to maximize camera performance, and identified SRO technology that needs to be replaced. Their laptops where they view the camera platforms on have been identified needing replacement. So they've reached their maximum years of service. So any questions? I know that was kind of fast and that was a lot of information, but I promised I wouldn't take a lot of time. So being my first time.
Well, that was a speed drill, but we do appreciate brevity. So I would like to ask about the cameras. So are SROs able to view on their phone or on an iPad while they're kind of out and about, or does it have to be on a laptop?
Right now, it's on a laptop. We're working through the process of changing camera manufacturers in able to provide them with the remote access they need from a cell phone or something like that. I currently have the ability to view half of our system on cell phone now, but the other half doesn't have that availability.
I have a question, please. So what are the 8 areas that they talked about? There were 8 different areas?
Yes, sir. So we're in Area 1, which is Northeast Georgia.
Okay, so it's actually a
Physical map of the state. Can y'all go back to that slide for me? There was a map on that.
That answers that. I didn't know.
Yeah, there was physical
Okay,
regions in the state is broken up into 8 different areas.
okay. That answers that. But another question I have, and I appreciate all that you're doing with this, is so how are we communicating to students about what swatting, hoaxes, any of that kind of stuff?
So I've been
you know-
speaking with administrators at each of the schools. I pass on the intelligence that we have and encourage them to have discussions with their students on, what this is gonna look like, what to expect when law enforcement come in. I've had personal conversations with each one of the principals on that about, how that's gonna look and how detrimental or how, traumatic it could possibly be.
But on the other side of that, what I want to say as well is somebody may find it funny.
Right.
Whatever social media thing, is the thing to do.
Yes.
Some of these kids may want to not understand, you do this, we're talking about federal prosecution. This is not something you take lightly.
Yes, sir.
I do worry that some kids may not understand.
So far, the intelligence seems to indicate that it's one particular group, and it's coming from international sources. There don't appear to be any, copycat or anything like that, like we experienced several years ago with the bomb threats. It doesn't appear to be that right now, and I think they understand how serious it is, but we are having conversations with the administrators so they understand that, yes, it is a federal prosecution, it's a terrorism charge, and more importantly, people that are responding to these incidents, it's an emergency situation. First responders are putting their lives on the line to get there, and not to mention all the traumatic, stories and, realizations of how things happen when law enforcement coming in a school, when clearing classrooms, and, some of the students have never experienced a situation like that. So all of those are in play when we talk about these situations with the staff, and, and conversation is the most important part of this. Them expecting how this is going to go and knowing what it looks like is very important.
And, there's we have cameras here, but we also have how many kids in these classrooms in our schools. Sometimes they are the best problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And we still, and I get weekly reports of where students have reported things. So we had one from East just this morning, where a student got off the bus and heard something and went right straight to the staff and reported it. And that seems to be the common trend in all of these situations. It's always reported to us before it even gets reported to the state level. So they feel like they can trust us and come to us and give us that information because we are going to act on it.
Well, let me just say this. I know this board supports the safety and security. It's been something we've been behind for several years. Due to staff changes and COVID, we've kind of sputtered a little bit. We hope we can. We certainly appreciate everything that's happening and what you're doing. We all know, those of us that have kids in the system, those are our most prized possession, our future, and so we're just one incident away from just things just really being awful. So we appreciate what you're doing, and we really want to keep a focus, and we certainly want to, in an appropriate way, remain updated as to kind of what is happening and what is changing. Because I certainly don't want to go the whole, this pendulum rarely stops in the middle.
Right. Yes, sir.
And I'd like
It
for
just
us to
swings back and forth. Yes, sir.
I'd like to get it in a good spot where we feel good, about doors and about cameras and people not coming onto our campuses that don't need to be there, that kind of thing. So we look forward to appropriate updates about that.
sir.
Appreciate you coming. You had a lot to cover, and really do appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right.
I want to, next, I have a few slides, some updates on some facility projects, at Legacy Knoll Middle. I think you all have a copy of this, but a lot of work's going on at Legacy Knoll Middle. If you ride by, you can see the progress. We've certainly presented some pictures. You can see a lot of progress going on. We had an OAC meeting yesterday. Most of that's very positive. Of course, we're getting a lot of rain, and anytime we have rain, but luckily we've got a roof on most of the building, so we can move forward. But just the updates and looking at this, I'm not going to go each one of those, and you'll see them in the pictures as well. Planning forward, we're talking with the Centennial, the turf addition was approved, and we finalized the layout and the logos and those type of things this week. And I'll show a picture of that. They're beginning grading that field in the next few weeks, is what they had said yesterday. If we can get this rain out of the way and get the mud and those type of things that are holding us up a little bit. We're also talking about some weight room equipment and conferring with those, the athletic director and the coaches on those items for Legacy Knoll Middle. You can see the pictures here. It's just a fantastic facility. Overview, you can see the front parking lot's been paved. You see the primer coats going up on the walls on the interior of the building. The front parking lot, that was a little earlier while they were working, and of course this was finished later at that particular day or the next days. Final utility installations have taken place. You can go ahead and roll it. You can see the roofing material has been laid. And
What do they have on the roof?
this is a TPO roof. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't want to get technical on me. But those are good questions, but I'm not positive. I believe those may be the frames for the air conditioning units, though.
Look like roof curbs. Can you go back to the paving the parking lot picture?
Sure. That was the initial picture. I think there's a final copy or you could see the paving in a previous picture.
Okay.
There you go.
Looks a little clayish.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
If you'll run on, I think the last slide is a picture of our rendition of the turf. We were able to cut a few dollars off the price that we initiated, which was very positive. John Robinson negotiated the extra letters at no cost. We found a miscalculation through some of our staff and facilities that lowered that price a few $1,000s, so we were pleased with that. Helped us out a little bit. The LK logo, we made sure that was correct, and the Panther paw in the middle. Okay.
So it gets striped for soccer?
It is
Or
striped for
lined,
soccer.
lined for soccer, whatever's appropriate?
Yes, sir, it is there.
Okay.
It is there. So, before I go to the next presentation, I would like to recognize Miss Rebecca Thorpe. She is here with us tonight, our School Nutrition Director. I appreciate her being in attendance. She's going to be presenting in January some news in school nutrition. So we'll say that. And I've given David, Mr. Farmer, 2 minutes. 2 items, 2 minutes. Maybe. They said 3, 2.5. Come on up, Mr. Farmer.
Mr. Farmer, I'm always overruled. I just want you to know. I tell them to give you unlimited.
I appreciate that.
I'm always overruled. I'm just sorry. I apologize.
One of the positives, I can't remove this microphone, so I think we'll be all right tonight. But Dr. Brown Board, it's always a privilege to come and speak before you, and I appreciate the opportunity tonight. One of the things that you have in your executive summary is an item of information, and it's based on a great opportunity that Jackson County High School wrestling team has to be at a competition in McCallie School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Great opportunity, and Mr. Gilstrap and Mr. Powers will be transporting the children. So we do appreciate our coaches getting their CDLs and doing that. As I said, this is an informational item. Moving forward, we do have the option, if the board wishes, to have them a part of that approval process. If not, then we can continue and bring it to you as an informational item if it's out-of-state travel.
Well, I know in the past, y'all have just made those decisions. I trust y'all to make the right decision for that.
Okay, I appreciate that, Ms. Weaver, very much.
I would agree with that. I think we would just like to know,
Exactly.
Okay.
when they are going, or if there's, something that you didn't allow that we might
Okay.
get an earful about.
We
Might
can
be
do
good to know.
we can do that through the executive summary as an informational side, if that pleases the board. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. This is our first one this year. Typically 2 or 3. It depends on how far they are out of state. This one's not but a couple miles out of state from what I understand. If we're talking Ohio, or if we're talking somewhere, that's a little bit different story. Yes, sir.
I know in the summertime, some of our teams go to camps in South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
So
Mhm.
is there a mileage that you recommend?
It's a case by case. It just depends on the location, and if we have partners, if something were to happen to the bus that we can call on. So we would have time to get there.
Okay.
But we take it case by case. Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why a school bus is not a charter besides cost?
It just depends on location, how far it is past the state lines. One great thing, and I want to go ahead and move into the next session because it ties exactly into what you're saying. Each year, the Motor Carrier Compliance Division inspects our total fleet. We just completed that this week, and I will tell you that any issue that we had with our buses have been resolved, and they are 100% back in service. That is due to the fact of the hard work of our mechanics, but also the commitment that you as a board and our superintendent has in purchasing our new buses to update our fleet. So I believe as we continue to update that fleet and go ahead and surplus the 10-year-older buses, then we would be able and more open to do trips that, were out of state, within reason.
Well, I certainly think there's some good opportunities for our groups and teams to go out of state. So I certainly
Yes,
hope
sir.
we have nothing worse than going out of state and the bus breaking down. So I can appreciate that.
Right. Any questions? Dr. Brown, board, thank you. Appreciate your time.
I think that's all for operations, if there's not any questions. I will say, air conditioning on our school buses helps with out-of-state travel. For those longer travel trips, I believe in 20 or 19, we began air conditioning the buses here in Jackson County, and that puts a positive spin on the comfort of those students as they're able to travel as well. So, it's a good option.
Shocks.
They'll have what?
Shocks.
Shocks.
Because older buses did have shocks.
All righty. I'm not aware of executive session, or is there? Yeah. There is? Okay, so can I get a motion to go into executive session? So I have a motion. Do I have a second? So motion and second. All in favor to go into executive session? That'd be unanimous. So we will go into executive session, and we'll ask Mr. Brown. You gonna be the entertainment while we're gone? Farmer, you gonna be the entertainment? I apologize. I went over the line, Mr. Farmer. I'm sorry. All righty, it is late, but not that late, so, get a motion to come back from executive session? So I have a motion, do I have a second? Second. Motion second, all in favor? I believe that's unanimous. All righty, so we are back, we have no action, and we stand adjourned. Have a good evening, thank you for coming out.